today we're going through and we're going to do our construction and trades panel. We are super excited to be talking with everyone today. I'm going to run through a brief slide deck here, then spend most of the time in product, as always, so that you can follow along if you want to at home as well with some of these things that we're going to be mentioning. So if you have missed anything in our series, we have a ton of videos on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Fourlane. We have more videos being added all the time. And then we also have our Facebook group, Fourlane QuickBooks Enterprise Facebook group, where people go in and ask some questions. It's all users. I know there are a lot of Facebook groups out there. They're QuickBooks people, but not QuickBooks Enterprise specific. So it's a little bit of a different world, right, when we're headed up towards that mid-market space. As always, we do have our on-demand support. If you do not want to have to call Intuit support ever again, you can reach out to us. So we have that. And let's go ahead and move into our panel. I'm hearing some typing, so just to be aware of that. So I'm Marjorie Adams. I'm the CEO of Fourlane. I'm going to be moderating today. We also have 3 of our partners join us today. We've got Trisha, Kaylin, and Lori, who are experts here in construction and trades industry panel. So let's go ahead and get the ball rolling. Let me flip on here into product and start things out. So how about we start things out with Trisha here? What is one of the clients that you've had over the last however many years that was just kind of like cool, that you really took away, like, oh, that's really neat what they do? What is an example of something that you've seen?
I mean, goodness, we work with so many unique people. One of the coolest things was a company that is actually tracking assets. So being able to track like big servers, and they do badge scanning, so tracking people as the asset. So if something happens in a building, they can see who is still in the building based on their badge scan. So it was really interesting getting them set up and understanding, what their workflow needed to be so they could keep track of all of that.
I love that. We've seen that not just in that industry, right? So it's basically you have equipment that you use. Was their equipment a fixed asset, or were they also selling it?
It was a fixed asset for them.
Mm-hmm. And they're renting it out.
Yes.
Okay. Fascinating. So we see that a lot too. So not just here, I see that in equipment rentals for weddings. We have a lot of clients that do that. We see equipment rentals for heavy machinery. And we have some ways to job cost out those pieces, right? Ways to job cost kind of offset that depreciation expense.
Yep, they had to keep track of when they were doing testing, so their R&D section of their assets and how to handle having to move those out.
Very cool. Very cool. Lori, how about you?
Yeah, mine was similar. We had one where they actually built like new property, but they had their equipment as a company. And so they had to bill each other, right? So the hours, but they had to capture that in the cost. And so working through the workflows with them and how they needed to work. And then they added a different dynamic to it in that they were also flipping houses where they used the same. So it was like 3 different companies, but they had the flip and the flipping part of it and the new build part of it in the same file. So that was kind of an interesting learning opportunity for them.
Very cool. So they did the construction, but then they also rented. So like it was 2 separate companies, but rented from one company to the other the equipment.
Yes, but then they had to keep up with the fixed asset piece on the the one company that had the equipment, and how did they build that out? So it was very it was a fun project.
Kaylin, how about you? What's one of the ones that you've seen?
One of my favorite ones was a custom home builder but they specialized with properties on the water. So it's not just the house, it's the dock, it's the retaining wall, it's all of those pieces to protect the house. And so I just thought that that was really cool and interesting, looking at some of those projects. Like a similar experience, they also did repairs and flips in addition to those new builds.
Very cool. We and we have in here construction and trades too. I don't even know if trades is the right terminology to use. You know, basically we're looking at people, so people who are more on the GC side, and then we're looking at all the companies that contribute to that. But it's, I mean, it's services in general, right? It can be pretty much anything. And we do have clients, a lot of clients that are, they take part in multiple ways. So as example, we have a customer who builds, manufactures, right? They actually outsource it, but they say they manufacture. They manufacture dishwashers that go into restaurants. And then they also install dishwashers that go into restaurants. And then they also service dishwashers that go into restaurants. And I've noticed lately too that the service part, I don't know if you guys have seen this, but the service part, right? Those three things go naturally together. Not everybody wants to do the manufacturing part, but they go naturally together. And the service part is great because it's recurring revenue. Hopefully, we've got a good model set up for that. But what I've heard recently is people are struggling to find employees. Like we can handle the installation, but we can handle the repair service, but we don't have enough people to do the PM anymore. Have you guys been hearing something similar to that?
Absolutely. That's been a struggle lately. Yeah. Another struggle when you think about with the dishwasher, for example, is when they do the repairs, if they're offering warranties, like understanding how they actually track those warranties inside their accounting file.
Or if they need insurance to keep up with the insurance certification on certain things too, like for the contractors and stuff.
So it sounds like we're kind of going to some of this, but so Lori, why don't we start off with you there? If clients could hear one tip, if they could hear one thing that they walk away from, things you should do if you are in these industries in QuickBooks, what would that tip be?
Well, first it would make sure that we're doing our job costing correctly. Be able to do, you know, this is what we quoted versus this is what we're spending, because we want to make sure we're making money. And the other thing is like utilizing the custom fields to capture data to make it easier so you're not having to, you know, go and export everything out and do a lot of manual work.
Can you give me some examples of that?
So we did one with a client, that's where the insurance comment came from, because they needed to be able to do their insurance. You know, they had to get the certificate of insurance from some of their consultants and contractors, you know, and then some of the actual vendors, but they had no way to keep up with it. Now, one of the versions in QuickBooks will allow for that field to show up, which is where they were used to seeing it, but then some of the other people that were using the file didn't have that same. They were using the general instead of the construction, so it didn't have that field. But they were able to pull that on their vendor. They had that showing on the vendor center, and so when it got to a point when they ran a report, or if they were looking at it, they were talking to the vendor, they could say, "Hey, we need a new certificate because yours expires," and it was right there for them. In the past, they had been pulling reports to get that information because they were actually keeping it in Excel.
So they would do something like have a certificate on file date, and then that way it would show up, right? We would say it's a date field, and that way it would show up, maybe require it on the list.
Yes.
Then when they create a purchase order, that field, you could add that field to the purchase order. And so whoever's creating the purchase order could see that the certificate has expired.
Right, and they would keep them on the vendor master, right? So they would clip them in there so if somebody actually needed to see it, or have access to it. Everybody that had access to the file could see both, right? So they had access to all the information. They weren't having to go around and waste time going, do we have this? Where is it? Can't find it.
Yeah. So actually, this question just came up from Chrissy as well. Says that field now disappeared. So Christy, this is exactly what Lori is talking about there, is that when you do your installation of QuickBooks, it pops up a box, right? And it says, which version would you like to install? The different versions here have, quite honestly, very little difference between them, except for some of the reporting, right? So what reports you're going to see if you go into your industry specific reports. Also right here, I'm in the accountants edition, so I see some accountant tools. You would see some things specific to whatever industry you choose. But when you guys install, if you did not choose the contractor edition, then the field for tracking expiration dates of subcontractors is not there in any of the other editions. So if you want that field to be back, you have to go back, uninstall, reinstall, and choose the contractor edition to be installed. But what Lori was saying here is, that field, when it is available in the contractor edition, you can't pull that field onto transactions. So by using custom fields instead, which are available in all versions, whatever installation you have, we can pull that field onto the transaction so that it's in front of whoever is creating this, contract with the vendor. That makes sense. Okay. Tricia, what about you? What's the one tip that you would want somebody to walk away from?
I would say the biggest thing that I see is when they're creating their estimates, that they have to create an estimate at line level for everything. So, if they're, included in this estimate all of their costs for, the demo and, the building permits and, everything that we have to do to be able to get your true job cost and see what it is that you're actually profitable in this job, you really need to break your estimate down by the same way. So if your PM calls and says, hey, do I have any wiggle room? We need to do a little bit more demo work. You can actually pull that, budgets versus actual and see where you're at in each budget line.
And you don't have to do estimated revenue always, right? Like if you just have a contract, you don't have to, if you don't break out revenue by all of these different lines, you can leave the revenue as blank on each of the lines and then just have a, sales revenue item. But, breaking out that budget by cost is crucial to making sure that we are staying within cost budget, right? Cost budget is important.
The biggest thing I see that they forget about is the labor.
Yeah.
Not thinking about the labor cost being included.
Or they're afraid of it.
Yeah.
Which is probably most people's most highest cost, right? So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I actually had a client and they said, well, we don't really have any costs. It's just labor. I was like, oh my goodness. Okay. Well, let's talk.
Kaylin, what about you?
So my big thing is to, a lot of people do job costing in here, but they might not close out the job. When you go to those actuals versus estimate reports, we want to close the job. We want to, any differences between the actuals, we want to adjust. So then when it comes to doing your over-under billings, right, we do have a regulated financial statements, and you have regulated financial statements each and every month. Because I have a lot of people that come in, oh, but we don't really pay attention to December because it's when we calculated everything. And I'm like, but how do you know where you are? Yep, so closing out, exactly, right there. All of these differences, making those adjustments, recording your over-under billing. That way when you do go to look at your financial statements, they're regulated.
So this is we have I did a whole session on this report basically before, but this report is enterprise only, but it gives you, right, for everybody whose CPAs hound them at the end of the month or quarter or year for your over and under billings, right? So this gives you your estimate versus actual cost, percentage complete estimate, earned revenue, actual revenue, and what the difference is. So that's a great tip to walk away with. How about Caitlin? We'll stick with you. What is the struggle you hear most often from clients in this industry? Like what do you hear the most issue with, or things that people have the most issues with?
Hands down, I had someone on the job site, or I had my foreman, and he ran to Lowe's and they can't find the receipt. Hands down, like that is what I hear all the time. And so what I always say is, don't ignore those Lowe's receipts. Don't ignore that, hey, I had to run a Home Depot just to pick up something receipt. Because even though it seems like a small dollar amount at the time, those things add up. Okay. And so we do have, especially in this 2022 version, we have things like the QuickBooks app. You can take a picture on your phone. You can upload those receipts. We can now have these pieces come directly into the QuickBooks file. So there's, it should make it easier for when those situations do happen, because, especially in construction, it happens. And then we could capture it.
Yeah, being able to upload those. That's awesome. Trisha, what about you?
I think for me, the biggest thing that I hear is they don't know what they don't know. So a lot of times they know I need job cost tracking, but they don't know the other stuff. So, should we be tracking retainage? Is that something we do? We're taking customer deposits. Are we supposed to really track those? So a lot of times we'll go through a full design for the construction industry and show them different workflows, different options of the things that they could possibly be tracking, such as customer deposits, and such as, whether it's AR or AP retainage, for them to even, say, oh, yes, this is something I want to track. So sometimes it's just, hey, I know we do construction, but I don't really know how I'm supposed to use the file or what's important to keep track of.
Yeah, a lot of times in some other software, they'll have like an extra field, similar to how we have sales tax, right? Sales tax is tracked on like the bottom of the invoice. They'll have a field on the bottom of the transaction that is retainage, as an example. But in QuickBooks, they don't have that. They don't have that extra box that you can throw in there, but they have a workflow that you can create to track customer deposits, retainage, etc. So prepayments, down payments, whatever you want to call it. So that's good. And Lori, what about you?
It's either how to record the deposits without it showing that I have credits on my AR, or how do I get my timesheet to go in for job costing, which is actually how I learned to do QuickBooks Time.
Yeah. So why don't you tell us about that one? How did you they couldn't verify that people were actually showing up. So it was kind of a twofold. So the timesheets were papers, and kind of like what Kaylin was saying, they would turn them in or they would lose them or whatever. So we were able to get the client set up with QuickBooks Time so that they could do the application on their phones. So that way everybody just got signed up that was, working on the job. They could clock in the morning, assign themselves or, to the job that they were on, or be assigned, right? So it worked both ways. That way they knew when they clocked in, they could see what they were. Their, foreman could also make sure that they were clocked in. But then the time that they were actually on the job would sync over to QuickBooks so that it would capture that into the job cost, which is one of the things, as we kind of mentioned already, something that is definitely usually missing. I know a lot of our client base, they'll use Paychecks or ADP or Gusto, and we find that people struggle with that job cost. In other systems, sometimes in the construction industry, they'll allow you to do a stated cost, right? You can put in a burden of labor or a stated burden on top of labor too. But in QuickBooks, we have workflows, again, that we would be able to do those kinds of things. QuickBooks Payroll, even if you're not actually using it for payroll, being able to use QuickBooks Time, have it flow through onto a timesheet, will allow you to create reports that you can use and import for job costing as example. So you would be able to come in and see like your WIP summary report, I'm sorry, not your WIP summary report, your committed cost by job report, and see how much of unpaid wages, right, we have booked against a certain job. And having this tracked allows you to, you don't have to process payroll to get to that number. So we have set up clients a lot of times where, and especially, you know, we all deal with large QuickBooks files, where we have set up clients where we set up a separate file entirely, not the file where they process everything. We just have that separate file connected to QuickBooks Time so that they can import the time card information, get to this report, right? So we have the employees set up, we have jobs set up that flows from QuickBooks Time anyway, and what we can get to these unpaid wages to book, again, a stated cost. It's not exact, but it's close enough, a stated cost against the job, and then allow this outside payroll company to actually process payroll and not mess with, you know, our job costing, because usually they don't end up getting there. Hopefully that makes sense. We do have a video on how to do all this as well on our YouTube channel, but yeah. How about what do you hear is the biggest struggle? Trisha, I'm going to throw this to you first. What do you hear is the biggest struggle from clients? Like what do you see as something that is super hard in this industry?
Something, honestly, having the time to do it, you know. So it's good for me because, again, I get to have that opportunity. You know, one of the struggles is like when we work with a client and we design their workflows of how they need it set up, and then they bring on new staff and, you know, they, you know, bring on someone that already knows QuickBooks, is continuing to be part of supporting that company and making sure that the new people are still following those processes. So, you know, following the structure of the setup, the estimate process, all the way through, you know, when do we create an invoice? You know, how do we use progress invoicing? So more of just once we have got that design down, how do we keep that design in place and making sure that, you know, they're continuing to use it so that they can still get the results that they're looking for.
Yeah, it's one of the things that we do here at Fourlane is that we make sure that we record when we create our processes, that we record them through video. I know a lot of people ask for written documentation still, but that's kind of a thing of the past, it seems like. But we record those trainings and we give them to our clients to make sure that you have that continuance if somebody decides that they have you know, they need to take a break or not going to be there in the future. That's awesome. We have a couple questions from the audience. I'm going to go over there. We have quite a few questions actually from the audience. Well, I have hold on, I'm trying to see. Okay, sorry, I said I have a question on reports and then coming back down here. When pulling a report, how do I not have all the columns that are defaulted in the standard report? I don't want several of the columns to keep showing up. Norman, if you want to tell me which report you're talking about there, we could probably help you out. But if we come in here to, I don't know, you know, a job profitability report, or maybe even a balance sheet by class report or something like that, if you didn't want all of these columns to show up, depending on what columns they are, you know, you can choose to show different columns. So if you're seeing it by month and you want to see it by quarter, as example, so it shows less data, you can use that show columns by. You can also customize and filter out reports. So if I didn't want to see all of the classes, I could come in here and select multiple classes and just choose the ones I want to see. And then once I have that report built, you have two things that you can do. One is memorize reports. In the memorize report section, you will throw it into a memorized reports list. The thing that you want to remember with this is that everybody has access. Anybody who has access to memorized reports has access to this memorized report list, and they have access to modify your report if they want to. So be careful of that. Most of the time, if you want it to be yours, you don't want anybody to be able to touch it, then what we say is we want to go up to the view button and add that report to your icon bar. This is you as a user. It won't be accessible to other people. It'll just be thrown in your icon bar, and it will remember the settings of the report that you had, so you don't have to go in and do that customize and remove whichever fields you don't want to see and things like that again. Hopefully that helped. That wasn't specific to this. That's kind of general here. Let's see. Do you know, okay, how about if somebody wants to take this one, do you know how to set up IIF template to import payroll data from a scheduling program? If so, can you email it? Okay, but how about that? How would you guys tackle that if somebody came to you and said, I need to import IIF information, payroll data information?
So as a general rule, we don't use IIF. We would go through a workflow, or just check the reports to see how we could try to kind of automate the journal entry to go in.
Mm-hmm. What ways would we be doing that?
Well, just looking at the report, you can memorize the transaction, and then you can actually schedule it out. You would have to go in and obviously change the numbers week over week, or however often the payroll runs. But I've done this a lot with clients because it's the accounts are there. You just have to, and then even to the point if they're pulling a report, right, this is the field you're going to pull from to kind of match that on the journal entry, so it makes it a little bit easier for them to actually, they don't have to remember everything. So in the description line, right, you put this line on that report. Or the memo line, I'm sorry.
Tricia and Caitlin, do you have anything else that you'd add on there?
No, I mean, I think that she made some really good points. As a rule, we don't import IIFs. I also often show people some third-party apps that we use, so that if you do have information in Excel, maybe it's coming from a different, you mentioned a scheduling system, we can use those third-party apps to go ahead and enter it as well.
Mm-hmm.
Or the third option is we create a custom program to integrate.
There you go.
Yeah, we do have a custom application. One of the things too that we, when you're in Enterprise, because I did Accountant's Toolbox webinar a couple of weeks ago, we can batch enter transactions. Now, usually in here, because it's not easy to batch enter split lines, but I mean, a journal entry, let's be real, it's just the same as a $0 check. It's the same as, credit card. You can enter them as credit card charges and then zero out the credit card charges. Because it's just lines, right? Lines that we're going down. So we have had people that we batch paste in transactions. That's the way. And then kind of as Caitlin mentioned, like using Transaction Pro Importer. For some reason, and I don't know about in QuickBooks Online if you can import, but journal entries, you cannot import journal entries into QuickBooks Desktop. They do have, I know when you come down here, it says import and it says general journal entries, but that's coming from an accountant's copy. But IIF files, we still kind of stay away from. They did in the last couple of years change that process. I mean, first of all, you have to be in single user mode, so that really stinks, right? So we want to try to avoid that at all costs. But you now go through the API, so they're a little bit safer, but we here at Fourlane still feel a little bit uncomfortable importing IIF files. Okay. So again, Deborah, what I was just saying there is the way that you used to be able to import IIF files would not go through the API. So if there was any errors or anything like that, it wouldn't throw it back at you. Now they go through the API in the most recent years, but we still haven't seen enough. If you have corruption in IIF File Import, you're not going to see the results of that corruption for sometimes years. So we try to stay away from it. Using an import tool is much safer for our customers. All right, guys, we're at time. I'm going to hang out here and answer just a couple more questions. I feel like we got kind of sidetracked. We had a lot of people on today. I want to throw out there what's coming up. I had a couple of people asking what's coming up. So we're going to do some accounting related things in the upcoming courses. So some debits and credits. We have chart of accounts organization. We have account types inside the chart of accounts. What do they mean? Some accounting terminology. Because we had a whole bunch of people ask us for some accounting basics. This is something that we teach our clients, staff as well, right? Not everybody has an accounting background in our industry. Sometimes they just get thrown into it. So these are just some tips around what do these things mean? So that is what's coming up. If you have any ideas on what you want to learn, please definitely speak up. Let us know, throw some information in chat because we're always looking for content ideas that will be helpful for you all. And again, check out our YouTube channel too. We've got a ton of stuff up there. So just coming back around, we do have a question on file size, large QuickBooks files. So we did a panel discussion last week on on corruption inside of QuickBooks. And we talked about large QuickBooks files as well. So usually when we're talking about a large QuickBooks file, if you push the control and the number 1 key, you get this little pop-up here, and it'll tell you your file size on the left side over here. And in that file size, in like the pro space, we're saying if you're approaching 100,000 kilobytes, then you should be considering moving up into Premier. Premier, if you're approaching 150,000, you should be considering moving up to Enterprise. Enterprise, we tell clients when you are hitting a gig, it's time for us to plan. So you can tell that's a big difference, right? 150,000 up to 1 million kilobytes is what we're talking about. We should start planning for what we're going to do with some of your data, just like you do plan for what you do with your PST file in Outlook. We need to create a plan. By 2 gigs, we need to be taking some action, right? So there isn't a limit. I mean, I don't know about you guys. I've seen a 12 gig file before. It was very slow. I mean, there isn't technically a limit. It's just about how much of a little spinny bar are you willing to put up with. Okay. And if you have any questions on that, we can do a consultation for you as well. A couple other ideas in here. So advanced reporting would be a great topic. I don't know if you mean QBAR, Carla, QuickBooks Advanced Reporting, or just like reporting inside of QuickBooks. How to change or add forms would be a great class. That would be awesome. So we can definitely do that in the future. And then if you want to watch any of our videos, again, you can go into our YouTube channel. We have just a ton. So if you go into, let me see if I can pull up without pulling up something that I shouldn't be. So if we go to youtube.com/Fourlane, and I'll show you guys if you haven't seen it recently. So you can see here we have playlists, and in those playlists you can see all of the videos for the Enterprise Deep Dive series. So all of these videos along the way. We have different playlists for courses, right? Intermediate accounts payable courses, chart accounts courses, inventory activities courses. We have a whole bunch of things up there. You can also search through here. So as an example, if you wanted to do reporting, then I can search. This is just searching in our YouTube channel. So we do have advanced reporting, some things up there. Yeah, there's a lot. There are a lot of videos. I don't know how many there are up here, but there are a lot of videos. And we were one of the first people to start putting videos on YouTube around QuickBooks. So some of them are from like 2011, but they still apply today. So definitely use that as a resource. Okay, all right, guys, we're 5 minutes past. We will see you guys next week for some accounting information. Thank you to our panelists for joining today, and I hope everybody has a wonderful afternoon.